Hey everybody, we had a little bit of a snafu. Evidently, I hit the live button on my personal page, which was kind of interesting because I had several people um, join us there. And make sure that I've got Amy added here. There we go. All right, so I've got Amy invited, so she should be joining us here in a second. So a slight delay, as I guess I pushed the wrong button and the Facebook Live went to my personal page, which was interesting because it went public and even Amy's friends could see that. So I'm learning something here, so maybe there's an advantage there. I have to see if it can be shared to more than one page or group at a time. I'd already started looking into that because it would be great if I could share it to both the What's Selling group and the teachers group at the same time. So, okay, Gretchen's giving me a thumbs up, so something's working correctly now, so that's good. So, just waiting for Amy to get the notice and join us here. Checking on my laptop to see if the live is showing up on the right page yet. I'll tell you a little bit about Amy. Amy, I saw a video about her story, about her just being able to free up as an artist, and particularly as an abstract artist. And just there was just something about her spirit, something about the just the flow and ease in which she was talking about this that just kind of pulled me in, and I thought this is really something that I think that we need. And so since we first talked about doing it on the What's Selling group, because she is a selling artist, but it was really, as we talked more, it seemed apparent that no, her passion is teaching people, and so it was appropriate for us to reconsider that and do it on the teachers page. So, all right, there we go. Whoop. Add. So we're adding Amy. She should be on here any second. Okay, we'll try adding Amy again. Feels like some glitches today, but it's probably just operator error.
Yeah.
There we go.
Wow.
Yeah. So gremlins, although it might just be me and my lack of technical expertise, but Sandra says it's just the devil.
Yeah. Poor. None of it.
I'm sorry?
It doesn't scare me.
There we go. I'm not scared either. Good. Well, everybody, this is Amy Smith, who is an artist that has a great story that I really wanted you to hear. And I was just explaining, Amy, to the group, I don't know if you could hear it at that point, is we initially talked about you being on the What's Selling group for artists that are trying to sell their art, and kind of come into their voice and understand, and kind of grow as an artist. Because the majority of people, I think, on the What's Selling page are people that really got hooked on this crazy trend of acrylic paint pouring. And I know that that's not your thing. That's not we're not pulling you on here to advise us on how to do the paint pouring. But akin to it is abstract art. And so that's really, your own journey. And we'd love to hear about that. And then, and just watching the video that you did for Matt Tommy's group, and I just was really encaptured by just you're talking about just having a freedom and an ease and in your art. And that was just, I thought, man, this is really something that whenever I'm teaching my students, so many times I have some highly professional people, artists, full-time artists, and they're coming to my classes, and I'm always a little bit like, why are you coming to my classes? But they always say the same thing. They say, I'm too tight in my art. I need to loosen up. I need to have some more freedom. And so I thought this would do it. And so one of the advantages of flow art is it is not tight at all. But would love to hear your story. Welcome, Amy Smith.
Well, thanks for having me, Casey. I'm really glad to be here and share a little bit with you all. Yeah.
That's great. Now, how long have you been an artist?
I'm going to be 50 in November, almost 50 years.
Wow. I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pursuing some version of art probably for the last 25 years, since my mid-20s. And I started out in glass. I was a lampwork bead maker, so I made glass beads at the torch for a lot of years. Had some great success with that, but I had some health issues and also going through an adoption. Then I just put that on the back burner, trying to avoid metals and things like that. And at the time I started painting and collaging and doing mixed media, and I've been working at that ever since. I've been an abstract artist probably for the past 5 years.
5 years. Wow. Okay. That's great. That's great. We adopted our fourth child. And so I know that's really dear to my heart. So you have adopted a child?
Yeah. Congratulations. Yeah. Messa is, she's been with us 9 years. She's 15. So she was born in Ethiopia.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, I have a friend that did an international adoption, and boy, that was really sophisticated. That was complicated to do. Yeah.
When we went, it wasn't. It was a lot easier than it should have been. And now Ethiopia is closed because it was so easy at the time. But hopefully that'll reopen again once they get the king out. Yeah.
I heard a little bit about that. That is pretty amazing. We had an open adoption, and so we had one of the most wonderful, easy, inexpensive. I mean, we just really felt super blessed. I'm so glad that my fourth child, Gus, is with us. He's absolutely wonderful.
That's great.
Yeah. So 5 years ago, you shifted over into abstract art, and tell us a little bit about your journey with that.
Oh, wow. So I've always been a little bit of I can paint realistically, but it doesn't make my socks go up and down. I've always wanted to do things that were more eccentric, I guess, or folk art. I did a lot of folk art work. I painted a lot of animals, birds, cats, things like that. And all of them had crazy, vibrant colors and patterns. And all of my backgrounds were abstract. And I always I loved abstract art. I admired abstract artwork, and I always wanted to be able to do that, but I didn't think I could. And then I started working with a mentor, and we just met via Skype, and she just encouraged me to just go for it. And I don't know, something unlocked, and I started painting abstract work and never looked back. I mean, I can't go back to the old style that I used to paint. It just doesn't feel good to me anymore. I still love the work. I still, have things hanging around my house, and I still think it's beautiful and good work, but it's just not my heart's desire anymore.
That's so interesting to me, because I feel like that we are kind of I guess my path is opposite of that, in that I've always loved doing art, and I've always been fascinated by art, and always been a creative person. However, I don't have good perspective, and so I don't do good. I could like draw a face or an animal, you know, those types of things. And so I gravitated to abstract by default because I feel like I could do abstract when I couldn't do the other part. And your journey is kind of the opposite: is you could do all that, but you really wanted to do abstract, but for some reason you felt like you couldn't. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I think it was a freedom issue. I think that, and a fear issue. I grew up, my mom was a gallerist. She had a gallery in Charlottesville, Virginia, and she was also a show promoter. She started a large arts and crafts festival in the little town where I grew up, Crozet, and the show's still there. It's twice a year. It's a really successful arts and crafts show. So I was around really high quality artwork and fine craft most of my life. And I never felt like I had skill. I never felt, even what I did do, now when I look back on my realistic painting or my folk art, I see the skill, but I just really struggled with, it's not good enough. Of course, that's a struggle we have in a lot of areas of our life. And I think that it was just, it carried over into my artwork. And I loved abstract so much, but there's also sort of a pushback in society against abstract a lot, or at least there was when I was much younger. I think it's becoming more and more accepted. You know, the people that say, well, I can do that, or anybody can do that. And I would struggle with, is this valuable? Is what I'm doing valuable? Does it really, you know, have artistic value? And I would do an incredible background that really could have stood on its own as a painting, but I always had to put a bird on it because I just didn't feel confident to put that out there as my work. And it's interesting now, I have, you know, my work's in a gallery, my studio's there, so I work one day a week. And I had a lady come in a few weeks ago to sign up for a class with another artist, and she looked at one of my pieces of art on the wall and she said, you know, when you look at something like this, you figure, gosh, it really must not be all that hard. And she didn't know it was my artwork. And it doesn't bother me. Like, literally happens regularly now. People look at it and they're like, well, anybody can do that, or that looks like a 3-year-old did it. And I'm like, thank you, pat, pat, pat.
Well, it sounds like you've had a tremendous mindset change in a lot of ways. One was you had to have that mindset shift in order to do the abstract. Now you've had a mindset change to be able to accept people, their position, you know, their opinions, even the derogatory comments, without it tainting you, without it affecting your identity. And that's a really beautiful thing.
And even more so, especially, I live in the Pinehurst area of North Carolina, which is golf country, extremely conservative, extremely old school. People want paintings of sailboats and dogs and horses and golf courses. So they're, you know, culturally, they're just beginning to recognize that maybe abstract art is something that could be interesting or could be valued in this community. And I feel like I'm sort of on the front of that charge, myself and the gallery that I'm in, because we have a lot of abstract art there. So it's more than just accepting that some people don't get it. How can I help them get it? You know, how can I help them see what's expressed in abstract work? So I really enjoy when somebody comes in. I had a lady one time that came into my old studio that looked at it. She said, I never really got it about abstract art. I just come in here and look at your stuff and I feel something. I said, that's it. You got it. That's it.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Now you have gone a big step further, and now you're teaching other people. You're a teacher. You're teaching people to. Can you tell us about that process? I would imagine that teaching abstract art in the traditional sense is a lot more than that. This is a brush, this is paint. But are you able to teach? How do you convey a feeling? How do you convey something so that when someone looks at your piece that they get something off of it?
Well, teaching abstract art, to me, I'm not teaching technique necessarily or how to get the perfect painting. It's more of teaching the process of being able to let go of the inner critic, to stop listening to a little voice in your head that says that looks like a 3-year-old made it, or, you know, all of those voices that tell us that what we're saying isn't good. And just to be able to listen to your intuition, or in my case, the Holy Spirit. I'm listening for that voice, that guidance that says, put this color here or this mark there. And it's just the freedom to just be able to do that, and to not second guess, and to not be afraid of what the outcome is going to be, and just to feel that lead and follow it. So it's more teaching freedom. It's really teaching freedom rather than teaching painting or art. And
Wow.
I
Now,
do that,
how do you
do
do?
that painting and collage.
Okay. Yeah. So how do you teach your students freedom? Because I'm sure that that's, I mean, this group is all about how to teach. And so I can't imagine something more valuable that you could share with us today. You know, how do you teach people to have freedom?
Boy, it's hard for some people. Some people it comes easily, and some people it's really hard. I have a wide range of responses in my classes, but usually by the end of it, people feel like they've gotten a little bit more freedom, at least. I'm a little bit.
It's huge.
It's, yeah, interesting. Ask, how do you teach freedom? Surprisingly, I would say by taking away their freedom. if that if that
Would
makes
you
any
repeat
sense.
that, because you kind of blanked out a little bit?
Okay.
That seemed really important, and it jumbled up on my side. I didn't hear what you said,
Okay.
but would you repeat that, please?
Yeah. So strangely enough, in teaching freedom, I do it by taking away freedom, by imposing limits and restrictions, um, and maybe tripping people up a little bit. So, for example, when I teach, I do a sort of impressionistic or abstract florals class, and we always start that class with drawing just on cheap paper with a ballpoint pen. And we start looking at a vase of florals and not looking at the paper and drawing. And then you look at it and you close your eyes and draw. And then you do it with your left hand. And so it's kind of forcing people to let go of their preconceptions about what their art's going to look like. You don't have control. I also, I don't personally use brushes very much in my artwork. I use scraping tools. I use some rubber tools. They're called catalyst tools. And I use credit cards and old key cards for hotels. So I teach people with non-traditional tools for applying the paint. And we also sometimes work with really long-handled brushes, scribbling, and just non-traditional things that force them to get loosened up and not have an expectation about what things are going to look like. And some people, it takes them a lot longer.
I love that.
Yeah. Some people, it takes like the entire class time before some people never let go. You know, I'm like trying to get them to break free, and what they wind up with is a lot tighter. But, you know, to them, it's maybe looser, but to me, it's like tight, you know, but they made a little step in that direction. So, yeah, I kind of trip people up a bit, restrict them and trip them up a little
Awesome.
bit.
That's awesome. I tell you, we have a lot of people wanting to see pictures of your art, and I don't know the means to do that during this live, but in the Facebook event, I tagged in your video that I was talking about earlier, and then I'd love for you, maybe when we're done, is to just add a link where people can see your art. And I love your art, and so they should definitely check it out and take a look at it. And that's just really beautiful. So,
thank you.
Yeah. I've had similar experiences, not to the same degree that you're describing, right? You know, that intention of freeing people up. But I think I'm going to add that whipping to my repertoire. I mean, that's really some good stuff. I have had a lot of fun with with the highly professional people and people that teach art, and sometimes they have been the hardest students to work with, and they'll end up laughing at themselves, and saying, I just can't release myself to do this. But one of the things that's been really rewarding to me is that I might have had a student in my class 6 months ago, and we both kind of walk away going, fail. that was nothing was accomplished there. But we planted seeds, and those seeds grew. And as they continued to do their art, they kind of found it, but they had to have some kind of exposure to it. And then it took, in some cases, months later for them to have that kind of freeing up experience. And so it was worth it.
Yeah. I had an experience too I want to share. I had a couple of ladies that booked a private class with me, and they did that. I was not in the gallery. They did that with the person that was working, and pointed out a couple of abstract collages on the wall and said, we want to do that. So the day that they came in, I had set up for the class, and one of the ladies said, show me what we're doing. I don't know if she didn't remember or what, but I showed her the collages, and she said, that doesn't appeal to me at all. That just looks like a 3-year-old did it. And I was like, and she said, can you do something else? And I said, well, this is the class that you all booked when you came in, and this is what I set up for. I said, however, if you want to just paint a flower or something more representational, your class, whatever you want to do, I will work with you and we'll do whatever you like to do on your canvas. And she said, well, I'll just try. And by the end of the class, she was so enthusiastic. We did 2 small collages, and I just took them through that process of, rip and glue and design and all of the color elements. And by the end of it, she said, I cannot believe I made these. She was over the moon. So that, to me, that is the most exciting thing. I mean, she totally against, but by the end of the class, and it was only a 3-hour class, by the end of the class, she was over the moon. So that always makes me feel like, okay.
Don't you love that? That is really awesome. Yeah. Wednesday, I did it was a day. It was from 12 to 5, and it was a corporate training in which I'm a counselor and life coach, and so I was teaching on mind-based mood management. I was teaching on assertiveness. I was teaching on 4 personality temperaments, and to make the point, I worked in 2 different art projects using fluid art and so when I came back from break, I had the table set up. There was 20 of them, and it always tells me which one it's going to be, right? When I hear someone go, oh, good, arts and crafts, right? They got that smug attitude. I'm like, this is the one right here. That's going to be, I'm going to have to rip them away from the table, and they're going to be like, I'm not done. I want to do more. And having worked as a substance abuse counselor in several rehabs with men in South Georgia, a bunch of redneck men, that would happen every time somebody would come in with this attitude like, what? I didn't come here, to do this. And so one of the projects that I did was art trading cards with them. And so that's kind of similar with a collage effect, and they're just like, they're the most resistant in the beginning, and then it's like 12. I'm like, dude, we got to go lunch. We're gonna miss lunch. We've missed lunch. Let's go. Like, I need 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
You're just like, yes.
The lesson in that, to be wide open to whoever walks through the door, whatever the attitude is, because it's easy for me to get all stove up as somebody negative. But there's a reason why that's difficult for them. That person that comes in the door that is like, I don't want to do this. That's the person that needs freedom more than anybody else. So just let your heart be wide to those people when they come through the door. And sometimes, you know, they wind up being the one that's difficult all the way through the class. But by the end of it, they're going to walk away with something, whether you know it or not. They're the ones that really need to be there. So I try not to let
Well,
people get.
I think you just, sorry, there's the good word. We, I think what you just shared is probably the golden nugget of this whole interview. I mean, that is just when you identify the person who is probably the most resistant, and they're always do like a, you know, like a icebreaker in the beginning, go around the room, tell us your artist, your name, your artist level, if you've done fluid art before, you know, just a little, you know, I tell people to take 10 seconds, you know, to do this. And it's always the person that said, I'm here because she dragged me, you know?
That's the truth.
Good. What do you consider your strengths in your art and your teaching of your art? What is something that, why is this so passionate to you? Why do you have such passion in doing this?
Well, that's a good question. I think, you know, thing that we were just talking about, I've come from a place of tightness and fear, and struggling with whether or not what I had to give was valuable. So I think I'm passionate about helping people that discover that for themselves, whether it's through art or whatever it may be. You know, I have a deep belief that everyone is creative. And for some people it's art, for some people it's cooking or decorating, for some people it's telling lies, you know, everybody's creative. And I have a deep desire to help people discover their innate creativity. And I think as far as personal strengths, it's having been through that, you know, having been through the fear, the struggle, really difficult, painful life experiences, especially over the last 6 years. I've been through some major upheaval. And the art was what got me through that all. My creativity was what got me through that all. And I really want to convey that to people, that this is an innate thing that's in you, and you need to use it. You've got to do this in order to just function in your life, you know, whatever it looks like. You know, that may not, it's not the same for everybody. Like I said, it may be writing for someone, or dancing. My daughter's a dancer. My son is a musician. My husband's an engineer. He doesn't think he's creative, but he can build anything. And it's important to
That's
pursue,
creativity.
because it's something you're given in order to release the tension of your life. Yeah. So I have a passion to set people free.
That's great. That's great. We've talked about your process and about how when you have people in class, even some really practical things. I love those, and in my field of psychology, you know, we're getting a lot more into using your non-dominant hand, you know, and it actually even in assessment for people to draw. You know, there's the typical draw. House, you know, in a tree, you know, your yard, and then have them switch that to their non-dominant hand, and you just seem to access totally different regions of the brain. And so it's really cool to hear you say that you're doing that too. And so some of those things are very practical, and I really, really like that. And then you also have shared about your philosophy about that you're, if I could say it this way, you tell me if I'm not saying it correctly, but that your goals in teaching a class isn't necessarily like a paint and sip class where someone's going to leave there with a finished piece and not necessarily skill build, but they're going to have this piece that they can hang up on their wall whenever they get home. But instead is that they experience an internal change and have an experience during your class. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think I do both. I mean, generally my students do go home with something that they love, because we do talk about composition and color and technique in the midst of all of that. They usually go home with something they love. Well, I'll say they always do, because I haven't had anybody really dissatisfied yet. And I do some more technique or process oriented, where I do classes where we're working on books. I'm getting ready to go to Virginia for an artist's residency, and I'm going to be teaching a workshop there where we're going to be doing altered board books as illuminated books, where you take text and then you do mixed media art to illuminate the text, like the illuminated manuscripts. So I do like that, where you go home with a finished product, in addition to the abstract on canvas type of work. And everybody goes home with something they love and a set of techniques in their pocket that they can use in a variety of different mediums, or in, what you want to do with it, but also with that internal shift. It's my goal as a teacher to touch on all of that, because I think if you miss any one part of that, it's like a three-legged stool. There's the technique, and then there's the product, and then there's the spirit. And you have to have all of that. People go home without, they haven't gotten everything that they could get. And that's not to say that everybody has to follow that path. Not everybody is going to be teaching that type of class. That just happens to be how I feel led and what I feel like I need to be offering. Just a pure technique class, there's always room for that. That's a really good thing. So
that's good. That's good. The live I did last week, I shared some of my, I always do a student survey at the end of my class, and I usually teach a class from 10 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, with an hour and a half lunch break because food's important. So it's a 4.5-hour class. And so the beginning of it is very technical. I teach 8 or 9 of the basic, fluid art approaches, and then the afternoon is 3 really fun projects, and there we're able to get into a little bit more of the experiential. The tempo is a lot slower. They can take their time, and one of the most rewarding things that I read on those surveys is that Casey was able to create an atmosphere of experimentation and let me get outside of my comfort zone. And I mean, those are just, that's what I get passionate about. And so I love hearing, what you're sharing right now. It's just really great. Good. Now, I can also tell that you really love people. So how important is that?
Yes. Surprising for an introvert, but yes.
Is it, and I just bet in your workshops, you are also having an interpersonal connection with your students. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is.
You said as an introvert.
Yeah.
As an introvert, that can be a challenge, and I'm a primary introvert personality style myself, and so it's always been hard for me to teach, to get up in front of people like I did on Wednesday, and Monday I taught a class, I got another one next weekend. It's amazing to me that I actually seek out opportunities to speak now as being an introvert personality style. Now I just really enjoy it, and it's kind of become me. But it started with a lot of skill building. I had to work to get comfortable. I had such a tremendous fear of public speaking. Did you have a similar process?
I've always been able to speak in public. Throughout school, I was always the one that was in the poetry reading or the prose reading events. I like to act on the stage. I love to sing. I'm able to be in front of an audience. It's harder for me to work a crowd. So tonight we had the opening gallery and it's crowded, and I will hide from time to time. I'll have to go out the back door. It's the constant barrage of people. But in terms of standing up in front of an audience, doing something like this, or speaking to a large group, or teaching a class, it flows. I do get nervous. I always get nervous. And the truth, and maybe you can speak to this, maybe it's just me, but every time I'm about to teach a class, I always say to myself, why are you doing this? This is going to be hard. Do you really want to do this? And so every class I go into it with that fear of, I'm not going to do this right. It's going to be really hard. And then something shifts, and my love of people and my desire to share kind of takes over, and by the end of it, I'm like the people that come to my classes that don't want to be there. By the end of it, I, I can't get enough. It used to
Oh
really
my
drain.
gosh, you used to really what? I'm sorry.
Teaching used to really drain me when I wasn't doing it as much, but now when I'm doing it regularly, it just gives me energy and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like out of the four personality temperaments, you're probably split between an extrovert and introvert, and or at least have your extroverted side, can come forward, but then you have that introverted side that sees the crowd. I noticed even yesterday, whenever I was teaching, or Wednesday whenever I was teaching, that when I have my notes, and as I've shared on the screen before, is I'm a planner, and so I have 11:07 I'm doing this, at 11:13 I'm doing this, right, and I shared that with one of the organizers, and they said that would drive me crazy. I'd feel like I was constantly failing, and I'm like, no, to me it just helps me to understand if I'm on task, if I'm on time. I just look at it. It's okay if it's off. I just know that I've got to breeze through the next part, or I need to slow down or pause for some Q&A or some kind of filler, but once I had all that stuff on the podium, and pretty soon after I got through my introduction, I was walking away from my podium and, just kind of standing in the middle of this circle of chairs that I created and just talking and sharing. And now I was in my zone, right? Now everything's flowing. I'm way off my notes, but it's okay, right? And that's just how the two sides of me. I've got this planner, and then there's this part that comes out that is able to share, pretty readily. And then I noticed that when we had break, right, and everybody was just kind of talking and whatever, getting coffee and stuff, I was shutting down. And I wanted to go and talk to one person or two people. My introvert side was kicking in and wanting to kind of recluse a little bit. And every time that I do something public like that, it is draining to me. It is, we introverts are like rechargeable batteries. We got to get alone and in our charging station to be able to re-energize. And so I honor that about myself, and I give myself that space, to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's important. It's not what you're describing of having the schedule for yourself and then kind of breaking free from it sounds like my teaching, having that imposed structure, but being able to
Oh,
break and be free.
there we go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good. That's good. And it's been a process for me. I mean, 20 years ago, I was a terrible, terrible public speaker. I mean, it was just really, really funny stories, about just how awful, things were. And the now, I really enjoy doing it. I'm not the best public speaker at all. I think I'm, in comparison, very mediocre, to people. And I have additional difficulties, with doing that. But it's just amazing to me to be able to just, I guess, just really reflect on my own progress and see where I was and where I am. And so I think I'm sharing all this for the listener, in that maybe you can really identify with Amy and you can really identify with me. And part of this whole thing about teaching is you're like, I don't want to teach it. I've had people share on this group, I don't want to teach groups of more than 5 people. That the idea of teaching groups of 16, 25 people absolutely terrifies me. Yeah. But you too can grow. So don't let yourself be totally boxed in right now. It's okay to grow slowly, right?
Yeah.
It took me many years to have a comfort and an excitement about teaching a larger group. Now, my current threshold is about 200. The idea of speaking to people more than 200 really shuts me down. So I can go up in front of church and speak to 150. That doesn't seem to be a problem, but I think it's just that mindset and that glitch. And so for me, I don't accept it as a limitation and going, okay, I can only accept these gigs, No, I go, I want to be speaking in front of 500 people, and I want to challenge myself. And after I do that, I will walk away going, that worked, good, so that cap or that limitation, right, is now off. And now I have increased freedom in my life.
Right. Yeah, it's always the goal is to grow. But it's also okay if you never want to teach more than six
I
people.
agree. I
If
agree.
that's what works well, then for you, then that's totally okay. You need to know yourself and what your limitations are. I'm like you, though. I want to grow. I, in my own studio space, I like to have about 6 to 8 students. It's a smaller space. It's easier for me to focus on that number. But for example, this fall, I'll be teaching for Matt Tommy at the Gathering of Artisans. I've got 3 different classes, and the class, day one, 15 students, day two, 15 students, day three, 10 students so far. And that's a little overwhelming to me. It's a lot of people, 3 days in a row, but I'm just trusting that it's going to flow. So far, everything has. I've been able to go from, being afraid to do abstract artwork to that's the only thing I can paint to being able to show it and sell it and share it with people to being able to teach a few. And now I'm going to teach more, and it'll just keep going from there. So
That's really
it's an exciting process.
It is, and there's psychology. As a counselor, we're taught a lot about group dynamics and about doing small group, small group therapy. And the ideal range is between 8 and 12. And once you
Right.
have exceeded 12 people, then the whole group dynamics shift and they change, and people don't feel a freedom to share, as personally or as intimately in a larger group like that. And in some ways, then you kind of shift it into class, as opposed to group. People are sharing, maybe, but and I as the leader might be sharing psych ed, that type of educational stuff. However, I will just maybe as an effort to encourage you and the listener is that when you do get into that 15 range, when you do get up to there, in some ways it's easier. When I look back at all of the classes that I've taught in the last year, I just got a Facebook, reminder thing about my first class. It was a year ago yesterday was the first time that I taught one of these classes, and I was like, wow, that was a fast year, right? But I've taught classes with, over 20 people in it. I've taught classes with as low as 3. One of my classes, especially when I was getting started at a new venue, I was like, I'll do it anyway. We'll get it started, and I'll go there. And in some ways, that class with 3 was harder because people felt less inhibited with the agenda or where I was going. And so it actually slowed us down because they had a lot more freedom to kind of Q&A and stuff. And that's cool too. But we also had to get several things done. When there's a larger number in the group, the individual doesn't feel like that they can occupy your time. They can't ask so many questions. And so you can stay on track a little bit more. But it's just a
Right.
different vibe. It's just a different take, on it.
Yeah.
Nate,
Yeah.
what are you going to teach? What are those 3 classes?
I'm teaching I'm teaching my abstract painting following it's intuitive abstract painting or spirit led abstract painting. I'm doing another class called Playbook to actually create a book, painted pages, and actually bind the book, and then we'll decorate the book on the theme of creative play. And then we're doing a class called Make Your Mark, where I'm going to teach people how to make hand carved stamps and stamps out of basically junk, whatever you get your hands on, and also some stencils. And then we'll also make artist papers using the stamps and stencils that can be used in all different types of art forms and scrapbooking and things like that. So 3 different classes.
Mm-hmm.
I think I could have done the abstract painting class 3 times though, because so many people wanted in that class. I think there's a waiting list for it. So that's a clue for next year. I just need to do the same class 3 times.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations on your success with that so many people are attracted to you as a teacher. And again, I watched your video. It's already posted into the event for this live today. And so I would encourage everybody to go take a look at it. It's not very long. What is it, like 4 minutes or something? I
Yeah.
can't remember. But it's just, and I remember I remember being intrigued by those stamps because they did look like that they were handmade. and just the way that you were applying them. You know, there was just something about your manner, and you could, I guess it was because I could tell that you were really in your zone. You know, you were in this space, and you were, and that's very attractive. I think to all artists, you know, we're all trying to achieve that when we're trying to crank it, and we got a lot done and a lot of due dates, and that really seems to shut down our creativity. And you seem to have mastered that ability to just be at peace while you're doing your work. That's really great. Any thing else that you'd like to share with this group?
Well, I'm thank you for the opportunity to share, and I just want to say that if you're just starting out teaching, to not despise the day of small beginnings. If you just have a couple of students, pour all you can into them, and build from there. I have one student who has come and taken classes with me. We just connected, and she's taken 4 different classes with me over time, and then booked her 40th birthday party, invited all of her friends with me. So
Oh, wow.
one person in front of you, just connect, and you never know what's going to grow from that and where it's going to lead you. So don't be discouraged. Just keep pressing forward, and it's going to grow. So it has for me. It has for me. It started really small, and now it's blowing up in a really good way.
I could not agree with you more. Matter of fact, on a post on this page, I kind of went into a long spiel about the Bible calls it a man of peace. That whenever you go into an area, you find a man of peace, and that's it's not a gender thing, but it's what that means is that there's somebody who is a connector, and they connect you to other people. In modern day language, what I would call, and as a matter of fact, I shared with you about that class that I did, and there was only 3 people in it. And, I walked in going, this is not even paying me my time, to stop doing what I'm doing and come in here and do this. But had a good attitude and walked in. And there was one person in there that became a raving fan. I mean, she just went crazy over it. And, she's the one who took the message, into her connections. Now, she was a marketer, and she had 5,000 people on her email list. And so guess what she did I didn't pay her a dime, and she sent out, my events and stuff. And my next class had 21 people in it. And so, these are you have to watch your attitude going in, and allowing yourself, even from just a business standpoint, to connect and relate. And I try to be part of that is being generous, with your time. One of the best definitions of love I've ever heard is demonstrated sacrifice. Demonstrated sacrifice. In other words, for someone to know that I care about them, they have to see that it costs me something. And it's an effort, it's a behavior on my part. And so I always try to give more than what's expected when people come to my class. So whenever they leave there, they're going, wow, that Casey was a generous guy. One class that I had that was it was awesome. It was also very exhausting, and it was a large group and a new venue for me. And it was, while being thoroughly enjoyable, there was a lot of things that was taxing. My introvert side was having to get used to a whole new area that I don't know what the rules are. I don't know how this place works. And at the end of the day, this young lady who was in the class, she pulls out this wooden seahorse, right? And she said, I really wanted to pour on this. Would it be okay if I did this? And we're shutting down and cleaning up. And I was like, absolutely, do it. Grab some of my paint. It probably cost me like 5 ounces of paint, and she poured on it while I was continuing to clean up, and she got an additional, art piece, above and beyond. And it cost me a little bit, very little bit, to allow her to do that. And, her and her family were since then have just been raving about me on Facebook. What a great guy, what a great class, ready for me to come back to the area and teach another class. And so that's part of that. I think connection is showing love, showing care, demonstrated sacrifice.
I have a similar story to that. We have time. I,
Yeah.
well, do we have time? Are we good? Okay. I was in a studio previously, a different building, and a lady came in who was she had just lost her husband, and she just was passing through, and we got talking, and she shared that with me. And I just took time. We stood there and talked for maybe 20 minutes. I had lost my mom, and so I kind of could connect with her on that level about grief. We weren't talking about art or painting or classes or any of that. She was just passing through, and we had a conversation about grief. And I held her hands, and we cared about each other, and I poured into that way. And it was good for me, and it was good for her. And then she was on her way, and I didn't see her again for a year. And a year later, she showed up new studio, excited to find me, and reminded me of our conversation and how much it meant to me. And she was looking at my artwork, and she said, "I want to know how to do this. Can you teach me this?" I said, "I would love to." I said, "I will set up a class for you. If you get 5 people, we'll figure out a date for it." And this was at one of our events during the gallery. 45 minutes later, she came to me with a piece of paper with 5 people's names and email addresses on them and said, "Here, we're all going to take this class. Can we pick a date?" And we did right then. We set the date, and uh, then several other people that she knew wanted to. I was able to book a second class after that for people that weren't able to come then. And her friends that took that class have come and take more classes. And that was all from just caring about someone. And,
Mm.
not we go into caring for people with the eye that it will, bring income later on, but it does, when you invest generously with your time and your care, then that comes back to you in generosity and in blessing. So it works.
That's perfect. I love it. I love it. So, in recapping, your focus and what you do is to help people create freedom. And you do that in a loving and caring way in which you make connections with your students because you
Yeah.
genuinely care about them and love them. And somehow, some way, we get super blessed in doing that. And so and you don't do it with motivation to do that, but we get super blessed by that, and I can identify with everything that you just shared there as having very similar stories, many of them, and I know you have more than one too. And so that's to me, it's a real good note to go out on, and this has been so enjoyable chatting with you, Amy. I really enjoyed getting to know you during this interview, and I'm so grateful that you took the time to share with everybody here on this page, our group, and like I said, I'll make it available to you so you can share it too. I think that you had some beautiful golden nuggets for people here, and so as I always encourage the viewer, is you probably can't take everything that Amy has said and immediately implement all of that into your art teaching business. But if you could take one thing and implement it in next week and then keep doing that, then that's how we grow over periods of time. Amy, thank you so much for joining
Thank,
us. I've really been delighted.
thank you. It's been a good time. And I want to offer to everyone, if you have any questions that didn't get answered, feel free to reach out to me through my Facebook page. I'll be happy to chat with you there too.
Wonderful, great. And if you do me a huge favor and provide a couple links into the comment section of this where people can find you and your Facebook pages, your websites, where we can see your art, because it's beautiful, and I know people are really curious about that. So if you can put that into the comments of this Facebook Live, more than 90% of the views are done in replay, and so there'll be a lot more people that'll be able to access it then. For months and years to come. So thank you so much, Amy Smith.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Great. You have a good day, okay?
Too. Thanks. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye, everybody.